This is The Pulse. You're welcome back. Remember, we're live on DSTV channel 421. GoTV is 144. And all our social media platforms, you can also hit us. This is your home of independent, credible, and fearless journalism. This afternoon on The Pulse, we start off from the central region. I'll take you to Cape Coast now, where we're receiving reports of a broad daylight robbery. The robbers were on a motorbike, followed the person from the commercial bank, where he went to withdraw money, and asked him to surrender it. The robbers shot the victim and took away the money. Correspondent Richard Kujonyako is on that beat for us, joins us with details. Richard, give us details of what we know.
So what we do know is that this middle-aged man went to the Ghana Commercial Bank here at the center of the town, went to withdraw money. So the robbers too were on the motorbike, and so they were monitoring his activities. As soon as he came from the bank, and then proceeded to where he was going to buy some goods from a particular shop, they approached him and said he should surrender the money. He attempted, according to the police, the man attempted to struggle with them a bit, and then in the process, the people shot the left leg of this man, and so the man surrendered the money. He took the money and then ran away with the money. The police say they are on a hunt for these two suspects, and so they are putting 5,000 Ghana cedis on them. So any person who has information on the whereabouts of these two, they should just get to the police and then just give them the information. And so that's what we do know. At the moment, the victim is at the Cape Coast Teaching Hospital receiving medical attention.
Okay, so he was shot in the left leg, you say. About how many men does he recall perpetrated this act? So
he recalls there are two of them who were on the motorbike, and so as soon as he dropped the money, they took the money and then sped off on the motorbike. So he can recollect two people, and then the eyewitnesses also say that there were two on the motorbike, and this is something that the residents say they have never seen in Cape Coast before, and it was very far away from Cape Coast. If they would hear them, they would hear them from afar, but now it scares them, and so they want the police to do something about it. And the police are assuring the general public that there is no cause for any alarm because their men are on the ground and nothing untoward would happen.
Does he say how much cash they made away with?
Well, at the moment, the man himself has not mentioned the amount of money he was holding, but the speculation is that he was holding 2,500 Ghana cedis. And so that is the amount we do know for now, unless the man himself would confirm that that was indeed the amount of money he was holding.
But Richard, I'm sure you've been finding out how he's doing. We know he's receiving medical attention at the Cape Coast Teaching Hospital. How is he faring, though?
Well, so he lost a lot of blood, and you could, at the spot, you could see a lot of blood splattered all over the place, and so they had to take him quickly to the hospital. But we are told by the doctors that are working on him that he is doing very well and he would pull through. But so there is no cause for alarm. They are working on him and he will be fine.
And you say the Central Regional Police say they have a hold on this situation?
Yes, they say that they have a hold on the situation and want residents to help them, volunteer information leading to the arrest of these two people. They have detailed their men. They have detailed their men to be on the ground to ensure that these people are arrested. And they say that they're going to do everything possible to get the perpetrators behind bars.
Well, that's the situation from the Central Region. Richard Kujonyako, thank you very much for reporting on that. It's just happening today. Robbers have shot a man in the leg and made away with monies that you're told up to about 2,500 Ghana cedis. Police say they're on a hunt for these persons who are involved. Up to 5,000 cedis is a bounty for them if you're able to help them trace these men who perpetrated the act this afternoon. Well, moving on to some other stories this afternoon, persons believed to be members of the MPP who massed up at the Sifi Dwabuso District Assembly after the president's nominee for Chief Executive Godfrey Asante was rejected by the assembly members, say they are demanding a refund of monies allegedly paid to the assembly members to ensure approval of the nominee. The nominee had 11 yes votes out of 23 assembly members present during the time of the voting. This meant he could not meet the two-thirds threshold Inatalia Kwanza, is our correspondent. He's been monitoring that and joins us on the line with more. Ina, what more do we know about this alleged bribery to the assembly members?
Well, Aisha, these assembly members have refused to speak on this. But what we know is that these persons who have been recognized that they are NPP supporters say that prior to the confirmation, they had given these assembly members monies ranging from 1,000 to 4,000 citizens. They have all assured that they were going to give the president's nominee 100% yes. So yesterday, when he did not even pull up to the 2/3, they wanted to take their money back. It was for the intervention of the police who took these assembly members to the Jaboso District Command to ensure that at least tension went down before these assembly members could leave to their various houses in the evening.
Interesting, but I'm sure you've been interacting with the assembly members themselves following this allegation that has been made against them by these NPP members. Did they actually take the money?
Well, no one would come out and say that indeed I took the money. When you interact with them, they just tell you it has happened. They don't want to comment on it. But another interesting issue also came up this morning on one of Takradi's radio station. Yesterday, they voted. There was a confirmation for the DCE for Shama, and he as well also couldn't pull 2/3 of the votes expected. And then one assembly member from Shama AT Isaiah on the radio station said that the morning before they went for the confirmation, he had the DCE nominee gave assembly members 2,500 each. And they also failed to vote to confirm this DCE. On the other hand, the presiding member for the area also came up and said no assembly member has taken any money. So these are allegations, but no one has been able to come out and say yes or no to it, with the exception of Shama, where an assembly member came out to say yes, indeed the DCE gave 2,500, but the presiding member says no, his members did not take any of such money. So for Jaboso, they've refused to speak on this issue.
But the nominees themselves involved in this, Godfrey Asante, for instance, has he been speaking about the situation? Did he really know about this bribery?
Well, if you see the footages or the videos we are showing, it was so chaotic that we did not even get opportunity to speak to them because of how the alleged supporters were, going about the whole thing. So we couldn't get him to speak on record on it.
Okay. Well, how about the party at the level? Have they been commenting also? It appears we've just lost Inatalia Kwanza there on the situation at Jaboso. Already we are told that Godfrey Asante has been rejected, and NPP members are demanding a refund of monies they say they paid to the assembly members for that confirmation to be done. This time in the Bono East region because confusion rocked that delegates conference after bodyguards of their Tebu and Manting MCE Edward Ofori were denied entry into the hall. The bodyguards clashed with the NPP's internal security. Now, supporters who also accompanied the MCE to the venue were denied entry into the hall. That's the Atebubu Training College, which led to the misunderstanding between the bodyguards and the personnel from the party's internal security. Well, we are told that it took the intervention of the police and military men present to restore calm. My colleague, Parker Wilson, is at that delegates conference and joins us on the line. Parker, before we talk about the delegates conference itself, let's talk about this confusion that rocked the conference earlier.
All right, so Aisha, yesterday, before we got to the Gendi Senior High School, where the NPP held its Northern Regional Delegate Conference, we were told that some individuals who are not delegates had wanted to storm the conference or that secondary school, created some level of chaos. And so based on that, the national leadership, who are actually leading this regional conference, decided to ensure that the people who are going to be at the event should strictly be delegates. And so accreditation should be given to all delegates so that they will have access to the conference room. If you're not a delegate, you'll not be given the permission to enter. and participate in the event. So here at Atebubu, when we go here, we realized that the party was actually sharing accreditation cards to members who are delegates. So shortly after that, we saw a man who drove at the time, but didn't know that it was the MP for Atebubu, Amanten. So he came with a number of individuals and some bodyguards. So they were going into the conference hall. Then the party's internal security, who have been stationed to ensure that only individuals with accreditation enter the conference hall do so, decided to block or prevent the bodyguards of the MC into the main hall. Now, this created the controversy and misunderstanding. And Aisha, before one could realize, one of the guys just landed a blow at the jaw of one of the internal security guys providing security here, and he also returned the same blow. Then it degenerated. Then they started fighting. So some of the party supporters actually wanted to settle the issue, but the young men had already started making the confusion of fighting among each other. So the policemen and the military men who have been detailed on the premises to ensure that there is calm and security is assured, they decided to intervene. So they dragged, in fact, they held their waist. The bodyguards of the MTE, the police and the military, held their waist and dragged them out of the conference hall. Some were actually resisting. However, the police and the military put together, tried, and then did their best to restore calm. So that was the situation here at the Atebubu Amenten Conference Hall.
That's quite some action there at the delegates conference. But indeed, where was the MCE himself when all this was going on? How did he intervene?
So the MCE, the moment the two, that is the internal secretary of the party, and also his bodyguard, had the confrontation, because he's the MC and he has been accredited, he walked away and entered the podium without saying a word. In fact, after the incident, I personally went to him to inquire from him what happened and whether indeed the boys are his men. He admitted that, yes, these are my men. And, well, the allegation was that those who have been detailed to station at the entrance of the conference room were also the bodyguard of his contender in the nomination for the MCE. Mind you, Aisha, this MCE was just confirmed yesterday amidst a lot of controversy. In fact, his confirmation, we are told that the media was assaulted and people were not allowed into the conference room where they were having the confirmation. So there seems to be a bit of billowing fire between him and his contender. However, he was confirmed yesterday. So this, we are told, led to the clash between his bodyguards and the bodyguards of the other contender. He didn't say anything. He declined an interview, and he said that if he wanted to say anything, he would clarify or seek clearance from the national leadership before he comments on the matter. But however, he admits that the boys who followed him indeed are his men.
So then how was it all resolved at the end? Once they were pushed out, was that the end of it?
Yeah, so once they were pushed out, the doors of the conference room were locked. The police and the military were given clear instructions to ensure that the bodyguards of the MCE were far away from the conference.
Oh, my. So we've just lost Parker Wilson there. Telephone will not allow us to complete that. But we'll see if we can raise Parker Wilson back on the phone so that we can talk about the conference itself and how it turned out after that near misunderstanding or confusion between the MCE's bodyguards and the internal security of the NPP, which took the military and police presence, as you can see, for calm to be restored after that confusion earlier. Parker gives us the blow-by-blow account of how it all went down earlier at the Bono East Atebubu Training College, where that NPP Delegates Conference is currently underway. Well, so Parker joins us back on the phone. Parker, so let's talk about the conference itself. How then did it turn out?
Well, so the conference doors were shut to the bodyguards of the MCE. They moved away. Then they proceeded with the conference itself. In fact, the regional chairman of the party, who was given the opportunity to just welcome the delegates and usher them into the conference, expressed disappointment over what happened a while ago. His point was that the NPP is not a do-or-die party, and as a matter of fact, if there is any internal wrangling or friction, there should be a way to resolve the matter. It shouldn't end up into chaos and fighting amongst themselves. So he actually insisted that the military and the police should ensure that any individual who misbehave should be dealt with accordingly.
Okay, that's my colleague Kwesi Parker-Wilson there on the situation at the Bono East Regional Delegates Conference that is currently underway there, and later, subsequently, he'll bring us more. Now, 6 Christian groups have urged members of Parliament to listen to the voice of the people and ensure the swift passage into law of the proposed Proper Human Sexual Rights and Ghanaian Family Values Bill 2021, describing the activities of LGBTQ+ as an insult to the intelligence of God. The group, made up of the Pentecost, Apostolic, Methodist churches, as the Christian Council of Ghana, the National Clergy Association, and others, warned the MPs will be inviting the wrath of God upon the nation if they fail to back the law. Here's the chairman of the Pentecost Church of Ghana, Apostle Opokunyina, presenting the memo to the Parliamentary Committee on Legal and Constitutional Affairs.
Thank you very much, distinguished people and of Parliament. Thank you very much for the warm reception we have received from you. This morning, we have a number of Christian groups who are here, as you mentioned, to present our memo on the bill for human sexual rights and Ghanaian Family Values Bill 2021, which Parliament called for memos in support or otherwise.
Well, so that's the presentation. Well, a group opposed to legislation intending to make homosexuality legal in Ghana says the state has no business meddling in the sexual preference of consenting adults. The coalition, made up of private legal practitioner Akutu Ampao, and academic Professor Techua Menu, Professor Kwame Karekare, Professor Kofi Jima-Buedi, Professor Audrey Gajepo, H. Kwesi Prempe, Professor Raymond Atuguba, among others, argues that the private members' bill, sponsored by Ningo Prampram MP Sam George and others, criminalizes dissent in view and expressions contrary to the words freedom and justice. But presiding bishop of the Methodist Church of Ghana, Most Reverend Paul Kwabena-Boafo, and his colleague head of the Apostolic Church, Apostle Eric Nyamiche, tells my colleague Elton Brobe that the MPs have a duty to God's will.
Though we might have the rights, we might have everything at our disposal, it doesn't mean that you can just be moving around and doing what you like. Our constitution is very clear on public morality. What is it that we want to do? And if you look at the other side, which is the LGBTQ, they even the use of the word queer. Why would we want to even use that word? Because from very beginning we have known queer to be something queer. And so we need not entertain and encourage. Yes. And again, we should also take note that as a church, we are not against the people, but against the act. Against the act in the sense that if we should entertain it, if we should encourage it, it is hitting at the very foundation of our structure as humanity and as society and as Ghanaians. And that is what we think that the bill is looking at, and we must address it so that we can consolidate society and let society stand as God wants.
This bill is bringing the issue to the table so that we sit and talk and decide on what is best for the nation. Even in this bill, there are aspects of the bill that's protecting the rights of such people. It talks about people not taking the law into their own hands to go and do things against such people. For the first time, a bill is before us which protects the rights of even such individuals. Yes, and you asked the question whether if Parliament passes the law, and Parliament does not agree on what the bill is saying. The parliamentarians are representing the rest of the nation. You have over 90% of this nation being religious, and they are all saying no. So I don't see why. It is a matter of a process. Yes, we believe that it will come out in a way that this nation will win.
Now, one of the sponsors of the bill, Ningu Prampram MP Samuel George, says the endorsement by the churches gives him hope ahead of consideration of the bill.
It's quite a number of supporting memos. Today appears to be maybe the biggest in a go, but like you heard the deputy clerk say, the Apostolic Church, the Assemblies of God has come in, the Catholic Bishops' Conference have come in, and it's not just Christianity. The Islamic Council has also brought in their support. I know that Shaman Muslim community also did. I know the coalition of Muslim groups are on their way. So there is a large support, and do not forget that this bill, yes, it stands in the name of myself and 7 of my colleagues, 8 members of parliament, but we worked on this bill in conjunction with the National Coalition on the protection of Ghanaian cultural values. And this coalition is made up of the National House of Chiefs. It's made up of the Christian organizations, the Muslim organizations, traditionalists. And so we are in a solid place. We are not swayed. I mean, I always make reference to a July 1st, 2021 report, Dispatch 461 by CDD. And interestingly, the much talked about memo that has raised this issue again has 2 of the fellows from CDD as signatories to it. That dispatch shows that Ghanaians of the bill, but this is part of the parliamentary process, and for us, we are welcome to any memos, either in support or against. Like the deputy clerk stated today, we will go through the processes of evaluation, and there'll be a full stakeholder meeting where everybody who has every shade of opinion is welcome to bring it for us to shape the final bill. And so this is the process that we.
But eminent persons who are opposing this particular bill, led by lawyer Kutuampao, was on PM Express last night and mentions that the law cannot bar people or criminalize the act of 2 consenting adults.
What is dangerous about this bill is that one single bill somehow manages to breach almost all the fundamental human rights guaranteed under the Constitution. Let's for the moment assume that the bill does not contravene, does not violate, but it is a breach. You know, it seeks to limit almost all the fundamental rights in our Constitution. And you need to ask yourself, what exactly is the public policy justification for a bill that has this character?
Which rights specifically are you referring to?
Talking about the right to freedom of expression, the right to assemble, the right to organize and associate, the right to freedom from discrimination, the right not to be treated in an inhuman and degrading fashion, the right of privacy.
And it goes on. We'll get to hear from the Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs on this particular proposals that they've received so far. We are told up to about 100 proposals so far backing that bill for it to be passed in time so that they do not get these kinds of dissenting views, they say. Well, still to come here on The Pulse, we'll take a quick break. The race against time by government to avert crisis on public university campuses as teachers there embark on strike effective Friday over government's failure to reach an agreement with them. We have updates from the UTech meeting with government currently underway.
Any concessions would make will be, the only caveat will be the employer shifting its position. Because with the employer being at the same point, then they are trying to say it's either take it or leave.
Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. We head to the eastern region now where President Akufo-Addo is currently touring and he's been soliciting support from traditional authorities in Ghana to end all protracted chieftaincy dispute in the country before the end of his tenure. He's called on the Ekuapem Adonte Hene and the Ebri Hene Otuobo Jan Kwesi II to help him end the brouhaha surrounding the Ekuapem Hene's tool. He expresses excitement over the successful coronation, induction and gazetting of the Gamanche 3 days ago and asked the chiefs of Ekuapem to ensure that the dispute in the area comes to an end.
My district dear Kessie, and it's a Miami crew, Ekuapem Mai. My person, I Indian Samoan so, a baby here. Nina in your quiet sum, Ekuapem here. Udrano ba ya ba na ayeno fe e we report say ya no afrase no na menim say se be ya family also wo a na obetumi akuta mum na asumi no aba okuape na me yeah ubia na bia no en odan de no aka odo odan sana yitumi wie ho a chese me ba ayendie no abetinti mopa efre yendi ya na dagomba he efa nkrafodi ne befa Ekuapem achimoda na chimkutoku na bembela no na yehu say yes he na oba no be ya adwuma e masem hia kese. Many Minister for Tourism, Arts and Culture, Ura Awal Mohammed, and Dihu Komo, Emma Yama, Minister of Finance. My promise budgets or Babeye were November, a brief botanical gardens and houses. Inti enche a home so we be who say a buying I shall say a baby pigeon the biome. Botanical gardens are there Kesiama or my Nabako Wasem and Nawaka down. And they're there in Susan here. So we'll have a environmental heritage Kesia Ubo Q Gardens. Sounds to the Bepesa Dama be a Casama, a Brie Gardens, to see a Boku Gardens. Sounds to the Bay near Brewer home. And my same here Kesia. So I want to give you that assurance that we're going to get on with and do it.
Well, I'll take you to the Eastern region now. My colleague Maxwell Kudeko is embedded in the president's team. He joins us via Zoom with details of that. So that's the plea from President Akufo-Addo to his people that they should emulate what has happened elsewhere and ensure that they resolve the chieftaincy dispute in the area. What was really the response of the chiefs to the president's admonition, Maxwell?
Well, let me find the Abrahini who double sounds that I don't think any of the Ekuapem traditional area is more or less the critical chief for the government to adopt. So he has a very critical role to play, ensuring that the brouhaha surrounding the Ekuapem mountain instrument has come to an end. So the president had looked him to let who has so that they will settle their differences, ensure that there's peace in the government, especially regards to becomes the okay. So the Otumbo Jan Kwesi accepted the challenge.
Hey, Maxwell, I have a terrible connection to you via Zoom. We'll try and raise Maxwell Kudeko, maybe via phone, but we can listen to the Ebri Hene, who also doubles as the Adonte Hene, on this particular situation.
Blue skies. Say a good infinity in Vanguaso. Na Brebenuso, Eddie Nanu, Sadich Super. ne fiase ye den ebre tu di du market a ne ono ton ne opɛ na de ma wo na so senka factory ni wo ho de a ni nyina be factory ho de one district one factory no ma eno mra ma yen so pe say wo kɔ bia bia wo behu amampanyinfo e bagana ha wo dua nwie dia dance ana ka bia aye gardens ya obi beba jubilee house obekɔ ye be kire no wo bukum na nka wo hwɛ so de ne bibia si wo ROBBERY gardens ojugu go on wọ́n tọ́kwa wọ Nigeria yi wadawuruma ahaya na obesiesie yi na gardens ɛre sɛ a miwura wedi misrɛw ma wɔn fɛ sika nhyɛ mu wogya wo ma yɛn a ɛbɛyɛ yɛn dɛ nso ɛbɛda hɔ a sika no wɔ yi yɛde ma
Well, so Maxwell, apart from chieftaincy dispute, it appears that the chiefs also have a plea, and they've put that before the president. Issues about the ROBBERY gardens deteriorating and how they would need investment into it. But we'll talk about that. But first, let's talk about what their response was to the president's plea on resolving chieftaincy disputes in the area.
The Brunhini who doubles as that is the caretaker of the Okapmans too. So he's the rightful person to call with respect to ensuring that he brings all parties together and ensure that peace reigns in the Okapman. So he accepted the challenge in good faith. The president also mentioned that he wants to ensure that before he exits office, all chieftaincy issues that have been able as traditional authority will come to an end. He mentioned the just ended settlement on the Gama chair S2, and then other chieftaincy issues within the country that he's been able to bring finality to it. So the Adontihene also accepted the challenge in good faith. He paid a courtesy call on the Okrapihene, whose instrument is being disputed by the Queen Mother of Okrapmem. It's all part of strategies or meetings that gear towards bringing finality to the brouhaha surrounding the Okrapehene instrument and 8 gazettes. So the chiefs have accepted the call in good faith, and I've assured the president that they're going to try and bring finality to it. But prior to that, the Brunhini or Tumbo Jankwesi made a passionate appeal that the ROBBERY enclave is noted for the cultivation of pineapple, but because there is no processing factory or processing plant within the enclave, farmers are always short-changed. That people who come to buy their farm products mostly come from blue skies, and they don't give them best of price. So he appealed to the president to ensure that they put up a plant there, a processing plant that will process the pineapple that is being grown there as part of the one district, one factory project. He also called on the president to take a look at the ROBBERY gardens. According to the ROBBERY gardens happen to be the seat of government for the Gorgeous Bay. That is where governance was being run from. He mentioned the historical antecedents of the ROBBERY gardens and the fact that since the abolition of, or since the time that colonial masters left, little has been done to improve the ROBBERY gardens. So he pleaded on the government to invest chunk of money into the gardens so that they can use it as a proper avenue for creating or mobilizing revenue for the state, and then also to ensure that they maintain the cultural and environmental heritage that the ROBBERY garden is noted for. Meanwhile, the president in his response also mentioned that the Minister of Tourism and the Finance Minister has been in constant communication with regards to how to pump resources into the ROBBERY garden. He assured the people of Krapim that not too long ago he had a conversation with the Tourism Minister, who is very interested in the ROBBERY gardens. And then also the Finance Minister have also agreed to incorporate or allocate funding for the development or redevelopment of the ROBBERY garden in the November budget that is set to be raised in Parliament. So that assurance has been there. Presently, we are at the Okri district where the president is commissioning the Okri district assembly here. But unfortunately, it's been raining, but the chiefs and people are resolute there in the rain, waiting for the commissioning of the district assembly. And the president will bring today's tour to an end.
Okay, well, so that's the situation in the eastern region. Maxwell Kudeko, so it appears that we are in Okri now, and you say that from Okri, the president is supposed to end his tour of the eastern region, or is heading elsewhere?
Well, the president ends today's tour in the Okri.
Okay. Unfortunately, I've lost Maxwell Kudeko. So today's tour ends in Okri, where the president is currently with his entourage touring the eastern region. We'll know what happens next after this tour of Okri. This is the Pulse here on the Joy News channel. We'll move on to some other stories now. And several thousands of birds were destroyed nationwide in the recent bird flu outbreak. Farmers across the country have been counting their losses since then, even as government promised it was working on a compensation package for affected farmers. This afternoon, Minister for Food and Agriculture, Dr. Owusu Akoto-Efriye, has given the clearest indication yet that government will not renege on that promise. He's been speaking in the Western region.
At the moment, I have a memo at Cabinet for seeking money for compensation to the farmers. So you better convey to them, they shouldn't worry. I mean, this is my second experience. The first one when I was a member of parliament and the ranking member for food, agriculture and cocoa affairs in 2015, there was an outbreak. And we were in the forefront trying to force the government to give money for compensation. Now that I'm in charge, nobody can come and tell me. Rice, yes, rice, the same as OT. The same as Bono East, Bono itself, and Ahafu. They all have these valleys. I remember the figure when we were in Bono East, about 2 months ago, 3 months ago. They have 79 valleys. 79 valleys. I don't know whether Fojo can tell me how many valleys he has in this. How many valleys do you have? You have over 100. So you exceed Bono East. Okay, that's fine. The same for Uti and the others. And you know, when I became minister, 2017, the Korean ambassador then, who used to be a member of my tennis club, was telling me that his predecessor had invited a group of experts from Korea to Central Region. And he concluded that Central Region valleys alone can feed Ghana 3 times over, just Central Region.
Well, in a separate development, the minister has also urged the region to utilize warehouses built in the region by government. Well, some farmers had complained about the lack of food storage in the region, but the minister insists that enough has been given, so they should utilize it. Well, my colleague Kweku Asante is following the minister on this particular tour. He joins us on the line with details of it. Well, Kweku, let's first talk about the issues about warehouses that was raised by the minister, for instance, where the farmers and those present satisfied with the response that the minister gave.
So the things about this.
Unfortunately, we have a very terrible connection to my colleague Kweku Asante. The technology is really not our best friend today, but we can hear from the minister on the issue about warehouses.
We have built 80 warehouses since we came into office around the country. I don't know how many of them are here. I've just taken over we have 5 in the region. So you can use that for storing inputs and also for outputs. We've taken over. We haven't decided yet how we're going to use them. But at least you have 5 of these, and each one of them is 1,000 metric ton capacity. So instantly you have 5,000 metric tons, which is more than enough for your rice and so on. This is outside cocoa board warehouses. So that's good for you. So you need to think about how you're going to use them. Now, on the rice compensation that Mr. Koto spoke about, it was a great shock to us and disappointment to see that so many farmers had we failed them by giving them the wrong seeds, and instead of encouraging them, to discourage them. That's why there was such a sharp drop in the year following that. But I'm glad to see that it's picking up again. And it's picking up again precisely because of the market is there. People are coming to take your crop. And I believe that even people come across the border from Cote d'Ivoire to take Ghanaian rice. So the opportunity is there for further investment in the area.
So that's the Agric Minister touring the Western region. My colleague Kwekwa Sante is with him. Definitely, once we get a better clear connection to him, we'll join him. Thankfully, he joins us via phone. So, Kweku, let's first deal with the issues about warehouses that was raised by the minister and why it is not being utilized by those who are supposed to use it. Let's talk about that first and the concerns that were raised.
So the farmers and the people of the Western and Western North region are speaking about these warehouses. Although they've been constructed, they've not been fully operationalized yet. And so although the minister is urging them to use them, they currently cannot use them because they've not been completed, finalized, and handed over to the regional directorate of Agri. And so they are raising those specific concerns, and they want the minister to hand it over to them even before he leaves the region. But the minister is wrapping up currently from the region and may not be able to do so. But they have also made the same concerns with the chief of the Sepiyosu area, who also spoke to the minister and urged him to operationalize these warehouses because they have a lot of food, plantain and other things that go back because there are no storage facilities. That particularly came from the paramount chief, the area, who was urging the minister to get some of these warehouses to be operationalized for them to be able to use them. The minister is giving them his word that he'll come back and they'll work on that.
Okay. Well, the issues about bird flu and compensation to farmers also came up. Beyond telling us that it was at Cabinet, he's pushed a memo to Cabinet for that to happen. Were there any other assurances in terms of when exactly, any timelines, nothing of the sort?
Right. So the minister has been deliberately warding off trying to give timelines and saying that most of the things that they have to do are not completely in his domain. And so although he has sent a memo to Cabinet, a lot of other issues would depend on police and the president and other things. And so he cannot give concrete timeline for which they will be paid. But he's saying that he is actually very sorry and apologized to them for the destruction of the birds and other things that came as a result of bird flu. But they were working together with other ministries. So this is intersectoral. The Trade and Industry Ministry is also having a role to play there. And so they are trying to get all and country on board to be able to ensure that they get to notice these specific farmers who made these losses and pay them before the year ends. But he can't say that maybe the next year, in the next month, in the next 2 weeks, this money is going to come. He says there's a elaborate process at Cabinet that they have to follow to be able to ensure that they pay this. The minister just concluded one aspect of the tour at the Over Oil facility, where he's been touring the coconut facility that he used to produce coconut oil and other things. Just before the minister came here, he was also at Wampo in Takrade, where they actually refine cocoa into finished products, into chocolates, among other things, for exports and also for the local market. The minister said one crucial aspect of this tour is to show up the country's ability to produce things locally. Last week, we reported when he went to OT and the Volta region that he was embarking on a project to ensure that by 2024, Ghana is no more dependent on rice imported or exported. And so they are going to ensure that we are producing the rice we are eating locally. It's also going to ensure that as the second biggest contributor of cocoa in the world, from Ivory Coast, we are also able to add value to our cocoa in the country, to be able to create jobs and to be able to retain a chunk of the finances that comes to the cocoa sector in the country.
Well, issues about rice production, rightly mentioned, it came up in OT. It appears it's coming up today also in his interaction with the chiefs and, of course, the farmers who gathered to meet him. Well, really, for the Western region, what exactly is he trying to push when it comes to rice production?
Right, so when he came to the western region and also to the western north region, he visited a number of rice farms. And the farmers had concerns about bad roads, for instance. They also had concerns about other gadgets and equipment that they would need to be able to ensure that their farming is moved from the subsistence level to a level where they can be able to increase their yield. The minister says he's giving them his word that he's going to give them certain logistics to be able to embark on this journey. But also that these farmers would have to pay something because, according to him, the government is not a government of necessarily freebies, but they will subsidize some of these logistics to these farmers for them to be able to afford and pay. And so there are a lot of milling machines, for instance, that they have in Accra. And if these farmers are ready for it, they can give it to them at a subsidized cost of 40%. They have to just pay 60% of the cost. The government will take the rest for them to be able to do that. So it appears rice has been big on the agenda right from the sea in the Volta region to western and western north currently, where the minister has been assuring that the government is very much aware of the goal it has set for itself and will ensure that the timelines it has set will be met. But if these timelines will be met, some of these bottlenecks should be cleared in terms of access to logistics, in terms of these.
Okay, so that's my colleague POKUASE Inteh joining us from the Agric Minister, Dr. Owusu Akoto-Efrie's tour of the Western and Western North regions. Unfortunately, we lost him there along the line, but point well made. Issues about warehouses, rice production, as well as poultry farmers to receive some form of compensation after their farms were hit, or their poultry were hit with a bird flu recently. Now, what do you do when you see others doing wrong things, especially on the roads? How about those who break the law? Do you know what to do as an ordinary person when you see something unusual around you? Well, the stealing of the crash barriers worth over $3,000 at the newly commissioned POKUASE Interchange is this afternoon raising questions about the individualistic nature of the ordinary Ghanaian. Well, we hear from some prominent Ghanaians on the need to revisit our core values as a people. But first, we can hear from contractors of the POKUASE Interchange who are urging the public to be on the lookout for a syndicate engaged in the stealing of streetlights and other road construction materials. Maxwell Agbagba has more in this report.
POKUASE Interchange was commissioned by President Akufo-Addo sometime in July this year. Well, many of the residents here were excited when it was commissioned because it reduced the travel time and reduced the traffic congestion, usually in this part of town. Residents who've been speaking to witnessed how the unscrupulous persons stole the crash barriers.
We encountered some people, about 5 people with a truck, and they were working on it. We thought they were working on it. It was at dawn, around 5:30. When we were coming from the church. Yeah. So when we met them from that end, where the last metallic pillar is, to the last end there, where they have, fixed the new ones. So they moved. We were here 3 days later. I saw some of the workers in the afternoon walking around and looking at what has taken place. So I confronted them and asked them, I have kids here who used to, play around, and I have asked you people to do this for us. And now that you have helped us with it, you have come back to remove it. And the guy told me they were not the people who came to remove it, but it was rather strange people who came in to steal. And I was surprised, because the way they did the thing, you will not suspect them of stealing. And they did it professionally, because the dressing and the way they were walking will not make you suspect anything.
Yeah, we heard they were wearing reflectors?
Yeah, they were wearing reflectors. Reflectors, and some of them were wearing overall, like workers.
Resident engineer of the POKUASE Interchange, Engineer Kwabena Buampon, says the crash barriers that were stolen are valued at a total cost of $3,500. He says they've already picked up signals that some unscrupulous persons want to steal some street lights on the interchange too.
We observed that about 10 sections of our crash barrier had been stolen.
or removed by unauthorized or unknown persons. And this is about 40-meter length. And we then proceeded to report to the police, after some time. And you asked about the costs. Presently, it's about $3,500 US. There is an operation or modus operandi of those who steal these streetlights. And what they do is that they start by tampering with their connections, and that virtually plunges the whole system, or the whole road into darkness. And then sometimes they come under the cover of darkness to remove the luminaries, or you can see them in broad daylight removing these luminaries. And we have seen some signs which presupposes that there are plans to do that, and that is why we have come public. But
So you've seen signs that some people want to steal the streetlight?
Exactly so. Because we've seen the covers opened, and in some cases the switches have been turned off, and this has alerted us to the operations of this syndicate who have done similar things on other roads. The Gifford Road, they have been to the that is the N1 on the N1 itself, which is part of the motorway from Tema to Accra. So once we say this, we want to caution the public to be on the lookout. Yeah.
We understand sometimes they even wear reflectors, so you think they are workers.
Yeah, exactly so. You see them in reflectors, and even for the street light, they come with the. Let me explain. Use you see them in that conveyor that takes them up, okay, and they will be removing the street lights. Yes, so you might think that they work for the contractor, but these people sometimes do not work for the contractor.
Finally, what do you think can be done about this situation?
Well, I think that I have said elsewhere that policing is a shared responsibility. If any of us see people who look suspicious, there's a need for us to ask questions. I think that where we always think that, these people, or we assume that these people are working for the contractor or for the road ministry, I think that we should begin to question people. If they have ID cards, we want to see them. If we want to take pictures, and look, I have done that. Okay, I have done that on projects where I see somebody, I ask you, where are you coming from? He says, this man says I should do. I say, okay, if this man says I want to take a picture of you, and then they become jittery. Once they become jittery, then that should tell you that these people have not been mandated or sanctioned to do whatever they are doing, and they could be thieves. There are these scrap dealers who go around stealing manhole covers. You put a manhole which is supposed to protect, both pedestrians and motorists, and then they go stealing them. So this is something that I would want the public to be on the lookout. And of course, our enforcement agencies, the police, and all who are involved in security, the national security, should be on the lookout for such people.
So now the thieves, we are told, disguise themselves as construction workers, so you definitely have to be on the lookout for them. But speaking on the AM show on the Joy News channel, chairman of the Ghana 50 Planning Committee, Dr. ROBBERY, shared his experience and says that it's time for proper sanctions to be applied for the syndicates to understand that they can't get away with stealing state property.
No proactivity. The councils are not taking steps to inform the public. I heard David say they should get to know. How do they get to know if they are not informed? I'll tell you, Israel, the few times I've corresponded with my council, the one thing that I noticed on their letterhead is that there isn't even a telephone number to call anybody to follow up. Deliberately, they don't put phone numbers on their things. And so I think, we need to, first of all, make sure that the councils have the capacity. I mean, we have decimated so many councils into little units, which I don't think really are effective. If you see a problem in Accra, where do you talk to AMA and where do you talk to Ayawasu and where do you talk to somebody else? So there needs to be knowledge about how to be a good citizen, provided by both the councils, the electricity corporation, which has got responsibility, the police, the security system, etc.
Well, the former Commissioner of SHRA, Justice Emil Short, also shared his views where he thinks that the growing indiscipline must be checked.
I think that there's too much dishonesty, lawlessness, and indiscipline in our society. And the impunity for which some people commit crimes is also on the increase. Now, with regard to the stealing of these important safety equipment, people have been stealing electric cables from lights on the motorway for quite some time now. And these activities mostly go unpunished. Dishonesty is pervasive in our society. You know, recently I read about several employers complaining about their Ghanaian workers conspiring to steal from them. And some of them have been compelled to dismiss the workers and to replace them with foreigners, thereby worsening the unemployment situation in the country. Also, almost every year, we hear of examination question leakages for the BEC and WASSCE examinations. These practices were unheard of in my early school days. So parents, teachers, invigilators, and educational authorities involve the youth in this corrupt activity, and unwittingly, they are encouraging the youth to engage in corruption at a very early stage.
Essentially recruiting them.
Yes, actually, yes. And then it is alleged that some teachers and lecturers sleep with their students for better grades. I mean, the list goes on and on. You know, like you mentioned, so many. And the indiscipline is also goes unchecked. Many motorists without lawful authority install and use sirens on their 4x4 vehicles.
Well, the NCC chairperson, Josephine Nkrumah, also says it is time for us to return to our core values as Ghanaians, reminding us about our rights and responsibilities when it comes to the protection of state properties.
I think these things have been with us from time immemorial. The question is the frequency with which we see it now, and actually the apathy with which we are treating this. So yes, we do see all of these things and they go unchecked. But previously, you would see this, but as we had more of a sense of a communal spirit, and people thought that what we owned was collective. And to that extent, when somebody sought to destroy something that was seen as communal, communities or persons in the community would rise against you. We are increasingly seeing a more selfish and individualistic society, and largely what I do is my business, and to that extent is no one else's business. And what somebody else does is his or her business, and to that extent is not my business. And so we see a lot of these things. Some of us would rant and rave, but taking that step to correct it has largely gone undone. We need to reset our priorities as a nation and begin to intentionally direct investment resources to institutions and the citizen in terms of our mindset transformation and development.
So that's the situation. As a Ghanaian, you have a right and a responsibility to protect state property it's time to adhere to that. Well, we turn our attention to the education front, and this afternoon the Education Minister is locked up in a crunch meeting with leaders of the University Teachers Association of Ghana. It comes as the association threatened to withdraw its services nationwide starting Friday, October 8, 2021, over government's failure to reach an agreement with them. So last month, we all recall, UTAG was in a mandatory 30-day negotiation over its demand for $2,084 for entry-level lecturers. But the association says despite backing down on some of their demands and government pledging its commitment to addressing their concerns, nothing tangible has been achieved yet. In a circular cited by JoyNews, UTAG President, that's the new one, Professor Samuel Nunu, directed members to resume their suspended action coming Friday. On your screens now is a copy of that memo, and it tells you the number, and it says the third update on the suspension of the withdrawal of teaching and related activities, which is dated 22nd September. So that's the memo there on the screen, and it ends by saying it is sad to report that the 1 month moratorium has elapsed and the negotiation has almost reached a stalemate. So that's the situation with UTAG, and that's circular to its members. So all members are hereby directed to observe this directive and act accordingly. We all know how it ended the first time when UTAG went or embarked on that action, and they had to return to the classrooms, but it appears that nothing much has been done. As we speak, together with all the stakeholders, they are currently locked up in a meeting to look at the way forward, whether indeed government will give them what they are demanding. That is yet to be seen. But we can hear from the UTAG president, Professor Nunu, speaking to us earlier.
Any concessions would make will be, the only caveat will be the employer shifting its position. Because with the employer being at the same point, then they are trying to say it's either take it or leave it. So we are of the firm belief that once the employer shifts and we say that now they are at the table and ready to bargain with good faith, then it becomes easier for you to work with us. But without that, it's impossible for us to make any concessions at this point.
You say the employer has done nothing in that respect in the 1 month period, and you speak about good faith. Is that to say that your employer has been acting in bad faith up to this point?
Yes, that's the position of UTAG. We believe the employer has acted in bad faith throughout that period, and that is the position and improve on their offer. Because without doing that, then it means we have reached, and everything makes it possible for us to then go on a strike as we have indicated.
Right. Now you've given Friday the 8th as a deadline, and if no agreement is reached by then, you're going to strike. Are you optimistic there's going to be any action before then, Prof?
As we speak, I'm on my way to Accra. They've invited us for a meeting. So all over the country, UTAG executives, the leaders who are members of the negotiation team, are on their way coming to the table for us to talk. So I'm of the firm belief that if they shift position, I don't think they're not ready to talk. But if they shift position and they bring out something that is reasonable and good enough, then it will be good for us to make progress. Remember, the statement mainly focused on them shifting position. And once they shift position and it's reasonable for us, then definitely everything will come.
Let's bring in the UTAG Legon president, Dr. Samuel Nkumban, joining us with details. We are told that that meeting is currently underway between all the stakeholders, all sides in this particular matter. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Samuel Nkumban. So let's first talk about this particular meeting following that memo for all your members to embark on a strike on the 8th of October, which is supposed to be on Friday or so. Well, what's the situation now? You're in a meeting with government on this particular matter. This is not the first time you've been locked up in such a meeting. Are we hopeful that anything good will come out of it?
Well, in the case that UTAG as a body is unhappy with the current situation, it's not as though UTAG is happy to be on strike. Reality is that UTAG is unhappy with our conditions of service, and that is the bottom line. And so it was expected that with the notification to government, we would be called to this meeting And certainly it's our expectation that there would be new office. Literally what happened before this notice had to come out was that the position of government at the time of the suspension of the strike didn't change even after the expiration of the deadline that was given, the 1-month period that was given. And so government, on the basis of quote-unquote inability to pay, did not shift the goalpost by way of indicating anything new. And so it's our expectation that in today's engagement, there would be some move on the side of government towards the demands of UTAG that members would have to be considering.
Well, so it's almost like a cycle, which we all know the script at this point. UTAG, declares its intention to embark on a strike. Government calls you back to the table. Within this 1-month period, what would you say has been happening such that your demands have not been met even halfway?
And so that is the challenge UTAG faces, because the reason for which we are where we are is government's inability to pay mantra that is being sung. And for government to ask for an extension for 1 month, we are not too sure what would have changed the fortunes of our economy, that they would be able to meet us with the demand they say they are unable to afford because of economic circumstances of our country. And so for us, the up and down is not a helpful exercise. And so the expectation today would be that at least government would give us a good enough reason to have called us to Accra to have this conversation. And so that at the end of the day, the notice to go on strike on Friday, we don't get there. Because it's not the case that UTAG is happy to be on strike. The point is that we have a responsibility to our country and we are willing to do so, but we cannot do so under the conditions in which we find ourselves working. And that is the bottom line. So we are hopeful and expecting that something more reasonable and positive would emerge as we engage with government in this afternoon's meeting.
Well, but in this afternoon's meeting, at least from previous, we followed everything. We've been talking about it. You're asking for that 2,084 for entry-level lecturers. Does it seem probable that you're going to get it today?
Well, we've been moving down by way of proposition, and so as of the last time we engaged, we certainly note that that is the place we would want to be. But if it is not possible immediately, then of course there should be some form of a roadmap that does not allow for us on an annual basis to be coming back to this table. And so you would recall that in the 2003-2004 year, there was a roadmap that led to the attainment of $1,500 entry points for lecturers. And the expectation is that something meaningful to start with as we gravitate towards the possibility of attaining where we rightfully should be. And also particularly that government has a responsibility to do a labor market survey that would give us some leverage as to the market premium levels that UTAG members should be enjoying, which is yet to be done. And it is our hope that that has to also be done in good time for us to look at other aspects that are hinged on that labor market survey.
But there are those who say that as leadership of UTAG, you know very well, deep down somewhere, that what you are asking for, you would not get. But it's a face-saving measure for your members to know that you're indeed fighting for them. Did I lose Dr. Nkumban? It appears that we've just lost Dr. Samuel Nkumban there, a UTAG Legon president there, speaking to us about their hope going into that meeting that is currently underway between government. We know that all the sides, the Employment and Labour Relations Ministry, the Education Ministry, we know that the NLC, the Labour Commission, is also at some point has been involved in this, and they are currently meeting to ensure that they get what they are demanding. So Dr. Nkumban, we apologize, we lost you along the line. So I was asking or saying earlier that there are those who say that leadership of UTAG at the various levels know that what you're asking for at the time you're asking, you know you would not get. But it's more like a face-saving measure to let your members know that you're indeed fighting the cause all the way.
Well, our members are very much aware that we've been at this for not today. We've started this conversation since the year 2017. And so for anybody to think that it is a face-saving exercise at this time of the year is inaccurate. The document which we are engaging today was submitted to government in 2019 and not today. And so for us, it's been rather the feet dragging of government that has led us all the way until today. And so it is not the case that UTAG leadership is aware and knows that we will not get what we are asking for this time around, and that is when we are engaging this as a measure to save anybody's face. Reality is that if there is any blame to be thrown at, then of course it is not rather to UTAG leadership and UTAG, because our request to engage in these conversations started in the year 2019.
So as parents and students, should we keep hope alive that UTAG will not withdraw its services come 8th of October?
It's our prayer that we get something that is meaningful for us not to get back there. Unfortunately, if that is not the case, of course, as was very expressly stated in the suspension of the strike, then of course we would have no option but to do the obvious, which is resume the industrial action, unfortunately.
But in your interaction, though, do you get the indication that those who are supposed to give you what you're asking for are really committed to the cause?
Well, of course, the point is that the people who matter in this conversation on the side of government are all present at this meeting. The Minister of Employment, the Minister of Education, the Deputy Minister of Finance, GTEC, and the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission are all here. And so the expectation, of course, would be that they may have consulted before coming to meet us, just as we have also consulted with our general memberships and did not agree with what government initially offered. And so we would listen to and hope that we get something that is sufficiently reasonable and members can work with whilst we engage with the outstanding matters that also hinge on our conditions of service.
Okay, knocking on wood and hoping that we don't get to what we saw previously. Previously was weeks and weeks of you being on strike. If you don't get what you want today and you have to embark on the strike, how serious will this one be from the previous?
Well, it has always been the case that withdrawal of teaching and related services border on a number of things. Some of the institutions are done with the academic year. They are yet to conclude with a subject of having to grade and to upload results and also to process examinations for students, graduations, and stuff like that. Invigilation of master's dissertations and all of that are teaching-related activities that are ongoing. And so certainly that would be an alternate effect just in case that no institution is engaged with teaching at this time. But certainly the other related teaching activities will not happen until such time that the conditions we are asking for are met. Or that at least government meets us at some point that is acceptable.
Okay. Dr. Nkumban, I'll leave you to go back to the meeting, and as and when that meeting concludes, hoping that you get what you want, then we would avert a strike on the 8th of October. We'll get back to you again on this. That's Dr. Samuel Nkumban, is the UTAG Legon president, also part of that meeting currently underway, and you've heard him outline the stakeholders who are in that meeting. We have the Deputy Minister of Finance in that meeting, Education Minister. We have the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission also in that meeting, Employment and Labour Relations Minister, as well as the UTAG leadership. Hopefully, we'll get what UTAG wants, and we avert a strike on the 8th of October. This is The Pulse. We'll take a quick break. Be right back. Welcome back, and maybe let's attempt to write an exam. Hopefully, we'll pass it. But the National Association of Law Students has disclosed that some law students failed their entrance examinations, not because they did not pass, but because there was an original intention to admit only 550 students. The association claims a total of 1,289 out of the 2,824 students who sat for the exams met the 50% mark, but yet were excluded from the successful candidates. Well, we'll get you a copy of that statement released by the NLALS there. So that copy is on your screen as we speak. So that's the concern that they've raised as the student body. But also this weekend, this issue was topical on Newsfile, and President of Imani Africa, Kofi Bentil, is of the view that the Ghana School of Law, even though has churned out professionals over the period, has outlived its usefulness.
Professor POKUASE,
right?
I've been fighting this issue about the law school admissions and related matters. There was a win in the Supreme Court where it was made clear that the law school processes were unconstitutional, illegal. They were given some time to fix it, and instead of fixing it, they passed a new LI, ostensibly to legitimize or legalize the illegal act they were, engaging in. The LI itself was unconstitutional. And we went all the way to the Supreme Court. The merit of the matter was not finished because we filed a review and the review was struck out on technical grounds. The point is this country needs more lawyers. The Ghana Law School has outlived its usefulness. We are restricting the production of lawyers to the capacity of the Ghana Law School, and that does not make sense.
So that's Lawyer Kofi Bentil there speaking on Newsfile earlier. Today has been topical all the way from the Super Morning Show. We've heard some views on this. Professor Ansah Sari, for instance, also raised concerns about the General Legal Council and their way of doing things when it comes to this issue about the law school. Well, Daniel Saki joins me in studio. He's a law applicant himself. He was denied admission. Thank you very much for your time here on The Pulse. Have you been able to, is this your first time that you attempted writing? Okay, and tell us about the experience. What exactly was the issue?
Okay, so the GLC, through their subsidiary agency, that is the Independent Examination Committee, released a communique in the dailies that's advertising for us to buy some forms and actually apply for. So we did that, and on the 24th of August, we sat for a 2-hour paper. It's only a single paper. But the paper has been divided into 2 sections, from JSS, SS. Whenever we are writing exams, we know we have section A and section B. So section A entails like 20 objective questions, which every question has is allotted like 2 marks. So if you pass the section A, you have 40 over 40. Then the subjective carries 60 marks. Okay. So the overall is 100 marks. The criteria give it to us initially was that when you were able to pass 50% of the paper, you qualify for an automatic admission. That was the initial. So we all strategized towards it. Some people decided to learn the subjective more, learn how to answer subjective, and probably some people also were like, oh, okay, if I'm able to get 20 over 20 in objectives automatically, I need only 10. I could remember one of our lecturers was even advising us and telling us that if you're able to waste 1 hour on the objectives and make sure you have everything correct, you only need to write your area of law and your issues, and you'll be able to go through. Okay. And we said, okay. Then we were there on the 28th of September. They released results. Then only 790 people passed. And previously, whenever they are releasing the result, they release the entire results, including those who couldn't make the 50-mark threshold. Now, they released this one, and it was only the passed list. So we became a bit suspicious. So some of us started writing petitions. We were not writing petitions for remarking or reviewing our script because they made us to sign our right to call for remarking off even before application. So it's part of the documents you submit for an application.
But as law students, those who are hoping to interpret the law and then also, why would you sign away your rights for that time?
We don't have a choice as at that time, even though, we don't have a choice. So you have to abide by it so that they will give you the opportunity to probably apply. So that was what we did. Now, we were not writing actually to call for remarking, but we petitioned them for our raw scores of our results, the raw scores of our results.
Is that the norm?
That has not been the norm. Automatically, they were supposed to release the entire results at a go. So when the pressure kept mounting, Professor POKUASE and the rest also wrote to them invoking the RTI Act. Then it looks like you couldn't withstand the pressure. I don't know, but they had no choice than to release it. When they released it, they will realize that some of us even had as high as 61, as high as 63, 57, 55. And
for all, or the subjective or the written?
Okay, so nobody told us that we have to get what in section A and what in section B. All that we know, or all that we were told before we sat for the exams, is that you have to get 50 marks.
Yeah.
So whichever way you're going to get your 50 marks, if you can if you can decide to probably throw the objective away and get 50 over 60 in the subjective, that was the understanding, or that was the communication that was given to us.
Okay.
So it came then, and they didn't communicate anything to us. Now, when we started raising the alarm that, oh, we passed, why were our names excluded from the passed list? Then the director of the law school, Mr. Prempe Ek, issued another communique that it is only it is the people who were able to attain 50% minimum in section A and 50% minimum in section B who were eligible for admission. And we were like, no, you cannot bring a criteria for selecting or a criteria for passing an exams after the exams has been written and the results released. So these are our contention.
But could it be that you were not aware that this was what it was supposed to be? Was it miscommunicated at some point to you? Because how do you go into an exam knowing that you have to get everything, but you are banging your hopes on getting, just the pass mark to be safe?
You see, we have a lot of issues when it comes to law entrance exams. The results that were released, some of us don't even think that is a true reflection of what we wrote.
Okay.
But we are not contending it. There wasn't anything like miscommunication. Their communications were so clear. Whatever communication they had with us, it was very clear.
Okay.
So we understood it, and that has been the practice procedure. That has been the rules of engagement over the years.
Yeah.
So, and the question is, if it was clearly communicated to us, why should they now come issue a notice to try to give us the rules again after the results have been released?
Okay.
That is the question we are asking.
So what's the next course of action then that we are hoping to take on this?
We petitioned the chairman of the Board of Legal Education. We copied the acting executive secretary of the Independent Examination Committee and the Chief Justice today.
Okay.
We are hoping that in the very shortest possible time, we are going to hear something positive from them. We know they are fathers. We know they are mothers, and they will understand our pains. Probably they might not know. It might be an error. It might be an anomaly. We are trying to let them draw their attention to their anomaly so that it should be corrected.
Okay. We
are pleading with them. We are appealing to them to listen to us, to review that decision. They are teaching us law. But the tenets of a principle of law, there must be sanctity of law. So I'm entering into JoyNews right now. You didn't tell me what are the rules here. Now I come in and break one of the rules, and he said, this rule you were supposed to have known. How do I know? You have to make it clear. So whatever is not a rule now, if I break it, you cannot come back and say retroactively, I have to be held responsible for it. And that is what we are saying. So we are pleading with them. They should review that decision. They should come clear. They are human institutions, and we are human beings. We all make mistakes.
Okay.
We consider this as one of the mistakes that any human institution can do. They should just correct it and issue another, they should compile another list to correct that error.
Okay.
We are just pleading with them.
Okay. Daniel, thank you very much
for
joining us. And the discussion continues, issues, concerns that have been raised about this particular exams, but we'll continue subsequently with more of that discussion. We'll take a quick break. When we return, we have sports.
time to bring you sports here on The Pulse. I'm Hans Mensah. The coach Milovan Rajvac is set to begin his second stint with the Black Stars on Saturday when Zimbabwe come visiting in the 2022 FIFA World Cup qualifier at Cape Coast Stadium. Milo led the Black Stars to the 2010 AFCON final and the quarterfinal of the World Cup later the same year. Joy Sports, in an attempt to understand why the Serb is most suited for the Black Stars job at this point in time, we spoke to a man who was part of the recruitment process then. Dr. Nyao Tamaklo was Ghana's ambassador to Serbia at the time of Milo's first stint and has been speaking to my colleague, George Ado Jr.
Thank you very much for your time. Let us talk about the Black Stars. And we know that we have a new coach in Milovan Rajvac. The little checks that we have done shows that you were part of his first coming, including others at the time when you were doing some very good job for Ghana football. Can you just take us through that story again of how you met Milovan Rajvac, and then I think later on you tell us about what we should expect in his second coming.
Okay. No, Milovan, when Milovan came, I think it's better I start with Dukovic. Then when I start with Dukovic, I think listeners will follow carefully how we got Milovan in. Now, when I took up the FA as a president from late Kofi, I think they have made arrangements for a coach from Portugal in the person of Barreto. So during a short stay at the FA, Barreto came in as a coach. And we started work with him. And we also had the opportunity to travel with him to Greece for the Olympic Games, which we took part, if you recollect. With players like Appiah, Stephen Appiah, and others. You know.
Yeah.
Now, we came back, and then we had one of the preparations for the World Cup matches at Barbara Sports Stadium at Kumasi. And I remember we played then Cape Verde. But that was in Kumasi. But after our match with Cape Verde, which we won by 2-0, Barreto left unceremoniously. He never informed the FA. Nobody knew anything. The next day we knew was that he's left the country and he was in Portugal. And that was a big, big blow to the FA. So we quickly had to look for a stopgap coach. And it fell on Sam Ade. I'm sure you might know Sam Ade.
Ade, yes, Sam Ade.
One of our best coaches at that time.
Yeah, Sam Ade, yeah.
Sam Ade was then busy with his own club and told us he can handle only one match for us. Now, Sam Ade took us to Kumasi once again to play Congo DR. And we did well. The results were 1-1 draw. So just as Ade said, he left us. So we were left without a coach. Then quickly we got in Dukovic. We advertised and Dukovic came in. Dukovic had then done quite a number of trainings in South America. So he came in, we had a chat with him. And we thought he was quite qualified to, take over the Black Stars, which he did. We went through a series of matches with him, and almost all the matches that were played in Accra, we won. So the matches I can recollect now is a match we played with South Africa. where we won 3-0 at Kumasi.
Yeah.
And what is interesting or was interesting about the match was that until that time, we have never been able to defeat South Africa in any contest.
Mm.
And after that match, I think 2004 or so, till a couple of weeks ago, South Africa has never been able to defeat us in any contest until lately.
Yeah.
And after South Africa, we played Burkina Faso. We went there and we lost by a 0 goal. And when they came to Kumasi, we defeated them by 2-1. In Uganda, we defeated 2-0. And it went on like that. Until finally, I left the FA. And then Kwesi Antechi, Papu, and Dr. Kofi Amwa were there responsible for everything.
And that is Dr. Nyao Tamaklode speaking to George Adu Jr. I'll bring you the full version of this interview later at 10:30 p.m. On Fun Zone. That would be all for sports. MFR continues with Pulse. And that's how we wrap up today's edition of The Pulse here on the Joy News channel. There's more news when you log on to myjoyonline.com. All the details. Akufo-Addo has extended the gender minister's leave, and the sanitation minister is to act for Sarah Adjoa-Safo. That and more on myjoyonline.com. Well, Let's Talk Showbiz is up next. Please stay. Thanks for your company.